Families, creating a lifetime of memories. Sadly, some families are denied these important moments due to the sad practice of alienation. These are families divided.
Hello, I'm Elaine Cobb, and welcome to this week's Families Divided. When people participate in alienating a parent or other family member, they may not realize they are actually participating in child abuse. Dr. Jennifer Harman is our guest today, and she'll explain how family alienation is child abuse when we return right after these messages.
Often, dealing with the issue of parental alienation can seem like trying to untangle the biggest rope in the world. You don't have to untangle parental alienation alone. The XO Foundation offers help through empowerment, equity, and education. Find out how the XO Foundation can help you by visiting thexofoundation.org.
My name is Dr. Jennifer Harman, and I'm an associate professor of psychology at Colorado State University. I've been studying the problem of parental alienation now for about 10 years, and so I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about this form of child abuse. Now, you may or may not have heard about parental alienation before, and there's a lot of misunderstandings about what it is. And so I'm going to first start today by describing what parental alienation means. Now, in some families, a child is pressured or kind of influenced by a parent to reject another parent, even though their other parent hasn't done anything wrong that would make that child act that way so strongly towards them. This rejection isn't just something they do one time. We're talking about rejection towards a parent that's consistent over time, and it's frequent. Now, kids can reject a parent for a lot of different reasons. But in this case, when we're talking about parental alienation, we're talking about rejection that's not related to anything specific that the parent has done or has been really exaggerated from something that a parent did. And the parent then is often left confused, like, why is my kid acting this way towards me? Or the things that the kids are saying to other people don't match at all their experience with the child or what's happened in the past. And so it's very different then of how their relationship used to be, making the parent often feel like really confused about what's happening. And when parental alienation becomes really bad, the child will start to refuse nearly all contact with a parent. And sometimes they won't even see or talk to the parent for years. And when people see children acting this way, when other people outside of the family see them acting this way, they tend to assume that the parent that's being rejected did something really wrong. That why would this child hate them so much and reject them so strongly if they hadn't done anything? They must have really hurt them or for that kid to never want to see them again. But that assumption is not true. Now, research with animals has actually found that even after an animal has been abused by their mother, baby monkeys and rat pups don't show fear or reject their abusive parent. Baby monkeys, when they've been abused by a parent, actually spend more time clinging to their abusive surrogate mothers than baby monkeys who are raised by normal surrogate mothers. And rat pups, or rat babies, don't experience their abusive mothers as abusive because scientists think that there's something that happens in their brain that they turn off a switch so that they don't feel fear from this abusive mother. So examples like this from the animal kingdom really indicate that even in a very abusive relationships, children form and they cling to attachments with their parents because it increases their chances of survival. Abuse is better than nothing because nothing is certain death to a child or a baby in an animal kingdom. Okay, so those are animals. We're animals too, but do human children act this way when they are faced with an abusive parent? Well, the answer is yes. Numerous research studies have found consistent evidence that among children who've been severely abused, such as across 27 studies of children in foster care, they don't hate their abusive parents. These children report wanting to go home with their abusive parent. They often minimize the abuse that they experienced. They make excuses for it. They often blame themselves for the experience that's happened to them. And they believe that there's still something good in the parent, if only they would just get help or get sober or stop acting badly sometimes. And so these children often have fear about the parent, but they hope that they will get better. And so what they have are what we call very mixed feelings or ambivalence towards their abusive parent. So when you see a child rejecting a parent, we can't quickly assume that that parent must have done something really bad. The child's rejection is not a natural response to the rejected parent or to their behaviors. And even if the parent had been very abusive, the child wouldn't normally hate them and never want to see them again. And that would normally, they actually would normally make excuses for that parent and hope that they would just change their behavior and then that the parent would stop if they just acted better themselves. So let's get back to the definition of parental alienation. We're talking about a child's rejection of a parent for reasons that are not legitimate. This means that the rejected parent has not done anything that would make the child want to reject them. In fact, we know that even if they did something horrible, they wouldn't generally reject them. The child needs to have been influenced by someone else in order to unnaturally reject a parent. And this someone is typically the other parent, but it can include other family members such as step-parents, grandparents, even other third parties like a therapist or a person who works at Child Protection Services who's been influenced by the alienating parent to influence the child to make them reject their other parent. So the behaviors used to influence the child have been called parental alienating behaviors. The behaviors make the child believe that their parent never loved them or that that parent abandoned them or is unsafe when they actually aren't unsafe. And for these children, they typically had a good attachment with the other parent. And now they're being led to believe that the other parent doesn't love them or left them or even hurt them, even if they didn't. And this makes the child feel terrible, right? It's like having your feelings towards someone go unrequited. If you love someone, it hurts to be rejected by them. And the really tragic thing about this is that none of it is true in these cases. The child is led to believe that it is. And when the child adopts this belief and makes it as truth in their own mind, then they feel angry and hurt. And they're not able to grieve the loss of a parent. And because that would mean they would have to work through all their good memories of them too. And that's too painful. So they can't see any good in the parent because they're too angry and too hurt to see it. And this is why severely alienated children are so mean and spiteful to the alienated parent. Now, what kinds of things would a parent have to do in order to have this kind of influence on a child, to make this child feel that a parent never loved them and abandoned them and that they're unsafe? Well, they do all sorts of things, not only using the child, but they will also try to do anything they can to hurt the other parent. This picture that you see on this slide is from a book that I published, a book chapter that I published recently, and it may look familiar to some of you. And it's modeled after the power and control wheel of domestic violence, which are behaviors that abusive people use to harm their victims. Parental alienating behaviors are a form of family violence. And so that includes abusive behaviors both towards the other parent as well as to the child. And you can see that one of the tactics that's used by alienating parents is using the children. When children are used by parents against the other parent, we sometimes call them as being weaponized against them. And the child will be told lies about the other parent, or the alienating parent will take a behavior or a past memory of the other parent and distort it so that the child starts to perceive that event differently. than what their actual experience was with that parent. And then the child may also even be pressured to spy on the other parent and made to feel guilty about spending time with them. And they may be asked to even lie about being abused by the other parent so that the child won't have to visit them anymore. The alienating parent will use the child as leverage to get the other parent to do what they want. They may tell the other parent that if they give them more money, they'll have some more parenting time with the child, or that they will have to give up some of their parenting rights, like decision making if they want to see their child. These promises are very manipulative, and the child is being used by the parent to get more and more power and control over their other parent. Now, in an article that I published a few years ago, my co-authors and I wrote about different forms of child maltreatment, and we provided examples of how this happens to alienated children. Emotional and psychological aggression is when a person uses verbal or nonverbal influence to try to harm a child emotionally or physically, like socially isolating a child from friends and family members, or corrupting or making the child believe things that didn't happen about and believe things about themselves and others that are not true. And alienating parents do this to children by making them believe falsehoods about the other parent or anybody associated with that person, like a step-parent or half-siblings. And then they may even reject and shame the child if the child says that they miss the other parent or that they want to see them. Or they might even punish the child for speaking positively about the other parent. They may get the child to spy on the other parent and give the child a choice about whether they want to visit the other parent or not. And that when the child has been manipulated to say, no, I don't want to see this parent, that child doesn't know the long-term consequences of what that will mean. And alienated children are also often neglected by their alienating parent, which is a failure of the parent to meet the child's needs. Alienating parents put their own needs before their own children, and they fail to see that the child needs love and care from both of their parents. Or the parent that they have been encouraging to reject, they're being told to believe that they don't need their love and attention. They may make the child feel bad about developing independence, which is expected to happen for children as they get older. And their emotional and developmental needs are overlooked by that parent, and they're not prioritized, which is considered neglect. Alienating parents will also often use children to make false claims of abuse against the other parent, something that we call legal and administrative aggression. This is when the courts or the police or child protection services are used to try to harm the other parent and the child's relationship. We also find that adults who were alienated as children report that the alienating parent often did other kinds of abuse towards them, such as child physical abuse. And sadly, the alienating parent typically has most of the control and power in the family, and the other parent is put into a position where they can't protect the child from the other parent's abuse. And I think it's important to mention now that scientists have not found gender differences in who alienates their children. Mothers and fathers are just as likely to be the alienating parent. However, we do find that how parents do it is different. So when mothers tend to use more indirect types of aggression, meaning they like to use other people or talk about the other parent behind their back or spread rumors about the other parent to teachers and other people. Fathers tend to use similar amounts of indirect and direct aggression. Direct aggression means that a parent would be trying to engage in more provocation or encouraging the children to rebel or not listen to the other parent. Now, a few bad behaviors are not enough to alienate a child. So none of us are perfect. No one's going to always react perfectly to a situation when another parent maybe is trying to provoke you. Sometimes we'll say things out of frustration or anger, but But that's not enough to turn a child against a parent. Fortunately, kids are pretty resilient. We don't know exactly what makes some more resilient than others, but not all children become influenced by these types of behaviors. But alienating behaviors are what we consider patterns of behaviors. It creates like a web that holds the child close to the alienating parent. And so the behaviors are done over time as a way to get control over the child. And then as a consequence, control over the parent, the other parent who wants to see the child and have a relationship with them. For example, if a parent's unable to call their child one weekend, this doesn't mean that the other parent is necessarily alienating them. That child might be busy or they got their phone taken away. The parent who maybe took the phone away has to do a lot of other behaviors in order to actually alienate the child from another parent. Now, you've probably heard of some people using the words protective parenting to explain behaviors that a parent uses to keep their child away from an abusive parent. There are some parents who are abusive, sadly, but to protect children from abuse without alienating them is what's really important. Abusive parents need interventions and there are many ways in which you can try to intervene and protect children. Alienating parents are abusive parents because they're committing behaviors that are making the child feel as if they're not loved and not cared for. That's not protecting a child. Now, even abusive parents aren't evil 24 hours a day, usually. The children still often love them very deeply and they want them to get better. They want them to change. But when they are abusive, obviously, we need to protect children from those behaviors. And sadly, the parents who make false claims of abuse about another parent to justify trying to keep the child away from them aren't actually protecting them. They often say they're doing it because they believe the other parent is abusive, but there's no actual evidence that they actually were. Or when the people investigate and find that there's no evidence there, these parents will often say that they just didn't get it, but they're trying to often use the claim of abuse as a weapon to try to take the child away from the other parent. Sometimes the parents will say to the child that they just need to tell them the truth about the other parent when the other parent has been abusive. And while that is important to protect children from abusive parents, there's ways to do that without making a child feel as if the other parent is 100% evil or that the other parent is posing risks to the child today when maybe they've gotten help now and the child can start to have a relationship again in a safe way. So the behaviors that alienating parents use, even in cases where the other parent had been abusive, these are situations we call hybrids, meaning that there's both things happening there. And it hurts the child because the child is made to feel as if the abuse that maybe they did suffer, if they did have any abuse, is worse than it is. Or maybe that parent has gotten help today and is better. So the use of alienating behaviors to protect children is not really accurate. There's other ways to protect them without turning a child against the other parent. So how can a parent protect their child without alienating them? Well, first, you want to get protection from the police or the court or child protection services. And if there's been legitimate abuse, you need proof, right? Otherwise, they will not know whether you're trying to manipulate the court or trying to get an advantage over the other parent. Alienating parents, unfortunately, undermine the protections needed for people who really are abused because they're abusing the system to their advantage. So when abuse is really happening, we can't just make allegations without proof. The accused person is innocent until they're proven guilty. And while the other parent is being investigated, the child is protected from behaviors if there was actual abuse. And it's important to not turn the child against the other parent when this is happening. You can be honest without telling them everything. You can say things like the other parent loves them very much and just needs some help right now. The most important thing is to not allow the child to feel that the other parent never loved them or abandoned them. They may be unsafe right now, but they're not always going to be unsafe. Now, if you struggle with how to do this, a good parenting coach or therapist can help you do that. Now, children who've been alienated show what we call reflexive support for the alienating parent. This means that the child will immediately jump to that parent's defense whenever they feel like that parent is being criticized or they perceive them as being attacked by someone else. The child feels often the need to try to protect that parent. Now, there are a few reasons why we see this among alienated children. First, when a child has rejected their other parent, they're completely dependent on that abusive parent. If they lose that relationship, from their perspective, they won't have anyone left. This is a terrifying reality, and they must see this abusive parent as perfect and ideal, and they need everyone else to believe it as well. Now, remember earlier that I discussed how children will minimize and make excuses for their parents if they were severely abused. And that happens here. The second that a child feels as if somebody's being critical of the alienating parent, they will jump in to correct them and defend that parent's actions. This is a red flag in the family as to who the abusive parent is and illustrates one of the many ways that alienation is expressed by the child. Now, we find that the best ways to intervene in cases of parental alienation are to treat the problem like child maltreatment. When it's mild, there are more options for treatment, like parent education and counseling services. Now, when the abuse becomes more severe, there needs to be more intensive help, usually involving the court. The alienating parent's abusive behaviors need to be stopped, and the child needs to be protected from them. And in severe cases, the child may even need to be removed from the care of the abusive parent until it's safe to return to their care. There's also sometimes a no contact order or a period where the child doesn't have any communication with the alienating parent so that the child can have some time to repair their relationship with the alienated parent without having it undermined by the other parent. And these approaches are the same as that are used for children who've been abused in other ways. And if it's not treated, we see the same long-term outcomes for alienated children as children who are abused in other ways, like anxiety, depression, and low life satisfaction. Now, on that note, I would like to, our time is very limited today, so I have no more to really cover here. But if you'd like some more examples, you're welcome to visit my website at jenniferjillharmon.com. And if you're interested in learning more, I'm sure there's many other shows in this series that you'll find very helpful. Thank you for your time today. Bye-bye.
Parental alienation is sad. When parents can't arrive at a solution amicably, it may be time to seek legal help for the sake of the children involved. In Florida, that's when you should contact Sparkman Law, specializing in litigating and defending complex and severe cases of parental alienation. Contact Shazia Sparkman, founder and managing attorney of Sparkman Law. Learn more at sparkmanlawfirm.com.
At Victor's Crown, our focus is on you, our clients. When you arrive, our goal is that you will feel at home, from our welcoming atmosphere to our serene surroundings. Everything we do at Victor's Crown is done with our clients in mind. We have comfortable seating areas for both adults and children. A large screen TV with surround sound where clients can be occupied with wholesome entertainment while they wait. We offer complimentary refreshments such as coffee, tea, water, and snacks. Due to the present COVID pandemic, our in-person appointments are restricted to selected cases, and those are held in our luxurious outdoor open-air meeting space that we affectionately refer to as the COVID Cabana, which was built specifically for our clients to offer them the most comfortable and relaxing outdoor space available. All our other clients are offered secured web-based telemed sessions where they can connect with us from anywhere in the world.